Can you tell which one is a pile of fruit and which one is a pile of cream puffs? If you guess the one on the right, you got it. Aren't these just the cutest things? I made these for Lunar New Year, and I'm gonna show you how to make them step by step, from the choux pastry to the pastry cream filling to the fondant leaf decoration. I believe every cream puff should have a cracklin top. If you've never heard of cracklin before, it's basically a thin cookie layer that adds extra crunch to the top of your cream puff. It's very versatile, enough to add additional flavoring or coloring like I'm doing here to make the cream puff look like a tangerine. It's really easy to make. This extra step is so worth it. The ingredients are simple, just softened butter with sugar and flour. For a more caramelly flavor and crunchier texture, use brown sugar only. For a more neutral sweet flavor with the more delicate crunch, use white granulated sugar. I'm using a mix of both sugars so I can kind of get the best of both worlds. I wanted flavor but also a blank canvas to color my cracklin. I'm mixing everything together in a bowl with a spatula, and if you want to do this in a stand mixer or using a hand mixer, that works too and will probably be much faster. Once the mixture comes together, I add my food coloring. I'm using red and yellow gel food coloring. I got these from my local grocery store, but my favorite gel food coloring I recommend using is by Americolor. I'll link those in the description below. You can definitely just use orange food coloring, but if you only have red and yellow like me, I start with a lot more yellow than red. Be careful with the red, because once you add too much red, it takes a lot of yellow to get back to the shade of orange we're looking for. Remember to add color a little at a time, mix and check the color before adding more. You can always add more color, but you can't take away color easily. The cracklin dough is all done, we just need to roll it out to a thin sheet. I place them in between two large sheets of parchment paper, then use my rolling pin to get about 2 to 4 millimeters. I don't recommend any thicker than 4 millimeters. Too much cracklin can weigh down the choux pastry and prevent it from puffing up in the oven. Do your best to get even thickness throughout so that your cream puffs bake up evenly. Next, we need to freeze the cracklin sheets so that they can harden up before we cut them into round discs. I place them on a sheet pan so they can stay nice and flat in the freezer. They will need 30 minutes to an hour in the freezer to harden up. This is a step you can do the day before if you're on a tight schedule. I'm making an almond flavored pastry cream to fill my cream puffs, but you can fill yours with any flavors like vanilla, orange blossom, or chocolate pastry cream, a yuzu, lemon, or orange curd, just to name a few. Or if you want something lighter and more neutral, you can also just do a whipped cream. Flavor creation is my favorite part about baking because I think pastries should taste as good as they look. And there's so much room for creativity, especially when you can layer flavors and textures together. Making any pastry cream follows the same steps. So even if we aren't using the same ingredients or making the same flavor, the process is very similar. You start by heating up your milk on low heat. I'm using almond milk. You want your milk to just start to simmer. It doesn't need to boil. While I'm waiting for my milk to heat up, I usually work on the egg mixture, which is egg yolks, sugar, salt, and cornstarch. Whisk these together in a separate heat-proof bowl that will be big enough to hold the volume of milk you're using. Once the milk is hot, very slowly, a little at a time, pour it into your egg mixture while whisking. This process is called tempering, which is slowly bringing up the temperature of the egg mixture to prevent the egg from cooking too fast and turning into scrambled eggs. Once all your milk is added to the bowl, pour everything back into the saucepan your milk was in and cook over low heat, stirring constantly and scraping the bottom of the pan. Your pastry cream is done when it starts to bubble and is thick enough to coat the back of a spoon. Remove from heat, then add cold unsalted butter and any flavoring you're using. I'm using almond extract. Mix until butter is fully melted and well combined. If you want your pastry cream to be perfectly smooth, pour it through a fine mesh sieve to remove any egg bits. This will also reveal to you how well you tempered your eggs. If no lumps are left over, you were patient, careful, and did an excellent job. Transfer the pastry cream to a clean bowl. Wrap with plastic wrap, touching the surface so that a skin doesn't form as it cools. Store it in the fridge until completely cooled. Making the filling is also something you can prep in advance, especially if you don't have that time to wait for it to cool all the way. I gotta be honest with you, the choux pastry is probably the most difficult step to get right. The first cream puffs I ever made turned into flat biscuits, but that's not gonna happen to you, not on my watch. Start with heating up some water, butter, salt, sugar in a saucepan until it comes to a boil. Measure out your flour and have it ready along with a stiff spatula or wooden spoon, because once your water boils, it's go time. Turn off the heat, pour all the flour in at once, and stir immediately until it comes together into a smooth dough. Turn on the heat again and cook the dough on low until it starts to stick to the bottom of the pan, leaving a thin white film. Having a stand mixer is very helpful in this next step. Drop the dough into your mixing bowl and mix the dough for 3 to 5 minutes or until the dough cools down. And I'll know it's ready if it feels about the same temperature as my hand. While the dough is mixing, crack your eggs in a separate bowl and whisk until the yolks and whites are fully mixed. The recipe calls for 4 whole eggs, but we may not use all of it depending on the final moisture of the dough. If you're baking with someone or multitasking, which I often do, I want you to really focus on this next step because this will make or break your choux pastry. While mixing your dough on a low speed, slowly stream in your eggs, adding about a tablespoon at a time, allowing all the egg to mix into the dough before adding more. It's also good practice to stop the mixer and scrape down the sides of the bowl to make sure everything is mixed evenly. Once you've added about 3/4 of your egg, stop the mixer and perform this test to check if your dough is ready. Grab a spatula, the paddle attachment of your mixer also works. Take a big scoop of the dough and allow it to drop by gravity back into the bowl. If it doesn't fall on its own at all, the dough is too dry and needs more egg. If it falls slowly with a little shake and leaves a thin V shape of dough on your spatula, it's perfect. This is the part that will take practice to recognize the correct texture of the dough. There's really no going back if you've added too much egg, so here is another reminder to take this step slowly. To prevent your parchment paper from flying, I smear a little bit of the choux dough onto the corners and use it like a glue to hold the paper down to the sheet pan. Don't worry, it comes off really easily after it bakes. Put your choux dough into a large piping bag that has a round tip to get perfectly round cream puffs. I'm using a Wilton 365 piping tip. If you don't have a round tip that size, you can use something as small as a Wilton 12. It's really up to you how large you want to make your cream puffs. I piped about 2-inch rounds for mine and spaced them about 2 inches apart, giving plenty of room to puff up and expand. This recipe yields about 16 cream puffs this size. After piping your dough on your sheet pan, be sure you're ready for the next step because you don't want your dough to be sitting out for too long, which can dry them out. Remember those crackling sheets we made earlier? It's time to pull those back out and cut them into little discs to give our tangerine cream puffs their signature color. The crackling is much easier to handle when they are frozen, so if they get too soft during this process, just stick them back into the freezer again and let them harden up. I used a 2.5-inch round cookie cutter, slightly larger than the dough rounds I piped earlier so that the overhang will fully encase the surface of the cream puff with crackling. Place the crackling gently on top of each dough round. I had some trouble removing the crackling rounds from my parchment paper because they were melting so quickly. Some of them ended up ripping, but it's not a big deal, just make sure to overlap the pieces so you can get full crackling coverage. Looking back, I think I should have baked these a little bit longer since some of them didn't quite hold their shape. This next step is very important if you want your cream puffs to stay fresh. Poke a small hole at the bottom of each cream puff, put them back on the baking sheet, the hole facing up. Put the whole tray back into the turned off oven, crack the oven door, and let them sit in that hot oven for 30 minutes. This is going to completely dry out the inside and allow your cream puffs to stay fresh longer even with a cream filling inside. I think cream puffs are best enjoyed the same day, but sometimes the schedule doesn't allow for that. So if we can prolong the freshness, let's do it. The baking part is all done. Now it's time to decorate. Right now we just have orange colored cream puffs, but when you add the fondant leaf, it turns into a tangerine. I'm using Satin Ice fondant. You can make your own fondant, but I wouldn't recommend it unless you are very familiar with fondant and know exactly how it should feel. I always purchase my fondant. This green color I mixed before from a previous cake project. You can also buy the colors pre-mixed. We're looking for a leaf green color. If you've never worked with fondant before, it's very similar to Play-Doh or air dry clay. To make the leaves, roll out a small piece of fondant as thin as you can. I used an X-Acto knife to freehand the leaves, but you can also use a leaf-shaped cutter if you have one. If you're freehanding, you're basically cutting out the shape of an eye. Take the pointy ends of the leaves and pinch them together to make the leaf more 3D. I pinched one end a little more to make it resemble the end of the leaf that is attached to the fruit and also provides a stable base for the leaf to attach to the cream puff. After all your leaves are shaped, give them some time to harden up. This can take at least an hour. You can also make these decorations ahead of time, and I actually highly recommend it if you want your decorations to last. While I waited for my leaves to harden, I filled my cream puffs with the almond pastry cream I made earlier. I didn't show it here, but I folded in about half a cup of unsweetened whipped cream into the completely cooled pastry cream to make a creme diplomat. This is lighter than the pastry cream and I think makes for a better bite, but this is completely optional. You will need a piping tip to fill your cream puffs. I'm using this piping tip that is specifically for the purpose of filling cream puffs, but if you don't have this, use any small round piping tip. The filling will go through the hole at the bottom of the cream puff, which we made earlier. Without a piping tip, it can be annoying and messy trying to push a soft piping bag through the small hole. Slowly fill the cream puffs. Try not to overfill them because one bite will just send the filling squirting out the other end. I usually stop when I see the filling through the hole when I remove the piping tip. To attach the leaves, I used a scribe tool, which is basically a large needle. First, poke a small hole through the top of the cream puff where I want my leaf to sit. Be sure to fill your cream puff before adding the leaf decoration or you'll risk the leaf falling off and breaking. Insert the longer, more pinched end of the leaf into the hole you created. You can use the scribe tool to help push it in. Once your leaf is in, it's all done. There you have it, a tangerine cream puff. If you give this recipe a try, let me know how it goes and how many people you fooled with your creation. I made these to celebrate Lunar New Year, but I think this recipe can be easily turned into a number of other fruits like lemons, coconuts, or blueberries to fit any occasion.